Some say appearances are everything. At Westlake Academy, the elite college preparatory school nestled among sprawling farmlands, image is currency. When 16-year-old Diego Alvarez arrives with mud-caked boots and calloused hands, Principal Diane Blackwood sees only what she wants to see: a scholarship student who doesn't belong in her pristine hallways. What she fails to see could cost her everything. Behind Diego's weathered work clothes lies a brilliant mind and an unbreakable spirit. Behind the modest Alvarez farm lies a legacy that would shock Westlake's privileged halls. And behind Principal Blackwood's carefully crafted facade lies a web of deception about to unravel. Sometimes, the dirt under your fingernails tells a more honest story than the words from your mouth. Sometimes, the people you look down upon are standing on foundations you can't even see. And sometimes, karma arrives not with a shout, but with a whisper that grows until it can no longer be ignored. This is the story of a farmer's son, a prestigious school, and the reckoning that comes when truth refuses to remain buried. The morning sun had barely crested over the distant hills when 16-year-old Diego Alvarez finished his chores on the family farm. His hands were calloused beyond his years, his weathered work boots caked with soil that told the story of pre-dawn labor. This was not occasional help around the house. This was survival. "I am going to be late again," Diego muttered, glancing at his watch as he rushed to change his shirt. The worn fabric of his clean button-up had been patched multiple times, but it was the best he had. No time for a shower. He splashed water on his face, tried his best to clean his hands, and grabbed his backpack. His father Hector stood in the doorway of their modest farmhouse, thermos of coffee in hand. At 45, his face carried deep lines earned from decades under the sun. "Education first, mijo," Hector reminded him, the same words he spoke every morning. "The farm will always be here, but your future is in those books." Diego nodded, taking the lunch his father had prepared. "I know, Papa. I will make you proud today." The bus had already left, so Diego began the 3-mile journey to Westlake Academy on foot. The prestigious school sat on the edge of town, its manicured lawns and brick buildings a stark contrast to the working farms that surrounded it. Diego had earned his place there through a scholarship, his academic brilliance opening doors that would otherwise remain firmly shut to a farmer's son. By the time he reached the school gates, first period had already begun. Diego rushed through the empty hallways, his boots leaving faint traces of soil despite his best efforts to clean them. He was almost at his classroom when a sharp voice cut through the silence. "Young man, stop right there." Principal Diane Blackwood stood with arms crossed, her tailored navy suit and perfect blonde bob projecting an authority she wielded like a weapon. At 52, she had transformed Westlake Academy into a college preparatory powerhouse, largely by cultivating wealthy donors and carefully crafting the school's pristine image. "Sorry, Principal Blackwood. The irrigation system broke this morning, and I had to help my father fix it before school," Diego explained, trying to stand tall despite being acutely aware of his appearance. Principal Blackwood's gaze traveled from Diego's dirt-smudged face down to his muddy boots, her lips pursing with each inch of inspection. Several students had stopped to watch the exchange, including Vanessa Wright, daughter of the school board president and self-appointed queen of Westlake's social hierarchy. "Mr. Alvarez," Principal Blackwood said, her voice dripping with disapproval, "Westlake Academy has standards. Standards that apparently escaped your attention this morning. I tried to clean up as best I could, but there was no time to." "No time." She cut him off, raising her voice for the benefit of her growing audience. "Let me tell you what there is no time for at this institution. There is no time for students who cannot be bothered to present themselves appropriately. There is no time for mud and filth in our hallways. And there is certainly no time for excuses." Diego felt his face burning as whispers rippled through the onlookers. Vanessa had her phone out, no doubt documenting his humiliation for social media. His hands curled into fists at his sides, but he remained silent. "This is not some rural public school that accepts whatever walks through the door," Principal Blackwood continued, her voice carrying down the corridor. "You are here on scholarship, Mr. Alvarez. A privilege that can be revoked." The silence that followed her words hung heavy in the air. Diego's heart pounded in his chest, but years of discipline kept his expression neutral. He had learned long ago that showing pain only invited more cruelty. Do I make myself clear? Principal Blackwood demanded. Yes, ma'am, Diego replied quietly. I cannot hear you, Mr. Alvarez. Yes, Principal Blackwood, he said, louder this time, meeting her gaze directly. She smiled thinly, satisfied with his submission. Report to the administrative office. You will spend first period writing a letter of apology for disrupting the school environment. And tomorrow, I expect you to arrive clean and on time, or don't bother coming at all. As Principal Blackwood walked away, the crowd of students dispersed, some looking uncomfortable, others smirking. Diego stood alone in the hallway, the weight of injustice pressing down on his shoulders. That was brutal, a voice said beside him. Diego turned to see Noah Palmer, one of the few students who acknowledged his existence. Noah came from money, but lacked the cruelty that often accompanied privilege. Just another day at Westlake, Diego replied with a shrug. She's always been tough, but that was over the line, Noah said, falling into step beside Diego as they walked toward the office. Everyone knows you worked that farm before school. It's not like you're out partying. Diego appreciated the support, but knew it changed nothing. Some people only see what they expect to see. In the administrative office, Diego sat down with a blank sheet of paper. The secretary, Mrs. Gonzalez, gave him a sympathetic look. Unlike Principal Blackwood, she had grown up in the same rural community and understood the reality of farm life. Just write something, Mijo, she whispered when no one else was looking. It doesn't have to be sincere. But sincerity was all Diego knew. He wrote his letter, not as an apology for who he was, but as a promise to try harder to meet the school's expectations while maintaining his responsibilities at home. He would not apologize for being a farmer's son. When the bell rang, Diego headed to his second period advanced placement biology class. Despite the morning's humiliation, his mind quickly engaged with the material. Science had always been his sanctuary, a place where effort and intelligence mattered more than appearance or background. Today we'll be discussing sustainable agricultural practices and their impact on ecosystem management, announced Dr. Patterson, one of the few teachers who treated Diego with genuine respect. For the first time that day, Diego felt himself relax. This was a subject he understood intimately, not from textbooks, but from the daily reality of working the land. When Dr. Patterson asked for examples of water conservation techniques, Diego's hand was the first to rise. The Alvarez farm uses a drip irrigation system that we modified to reduce water usage by nearly 40% compared to traditional methods, Diego explained. We also implemented contour farming to prevent soil erosion on the hillside sections. Dr. Patterson nodded appreciatively. Excellent, Diego. Theory applied to practice is the foundation of good science. The validation felt good, but as class ended, the memory of Principal Blackwood's threat lingered. A scholarship revoked meant the end of his education at Westlake, the end of his dreams for college, the end of his plans to revolutionize his family's farm with new techniques and technologies. At lunch, Diego sat alone in his usual corner of the cafeteria. From across the room, he could see Vanessa and her friends glancing his way, laughing. The video of his morning humiliation had undoubtedly made the rounds. "Hey, dirt boy," called out Jackson Reynolds, Westlake star quarterback and Vanessa's boyfriend. "Heard Blackwood finally called you out on your farm stink. Maybe you should go back to where you belong." Diego continued eating his lunch, refusing to engage. His father's words echoed in his mind. Your dignity is not determined by those who try to take it from you. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes, sideways glances, and whispered comments. By the final bell, Diego felt drained in a way that physical labor never accomplished. As he walked toward the exit, he spotted Principal Blackwood speaking with several well-dressed parents in the front office, her smile warm and ingratiating, a complete transformation from the cold authority she had directed at him. Outside the school, Diego began his long walk home. The afternoon sun beat down on his back, but the physical discomfort paled in comparison to the weight in his chest. He had earned his place at Westlake through academic excellence, yet he remained an outsider, tolerated rather than accepted. As he crested the hill that overlooked the valley, Diego paused to catch his breath. Below him stretched a patchwork of farmland, including the 100 acres that had been in the Alvarez family for 3 generations. From this distance, the farm looked small, insignificant against the vastness of the surrounding corporate agricultural operations. What no one at school understood, what Principal Blackwood had never bothered to learn, was that the modest-looking Alvarez farm had been quietly pioneering organic farming techniques that neighboring farms had begun to adopt. His father, with only a high school education but a lifetime of agricultural wisdom, had developed methods that university researchers now studied. "I will not let her win," Diego promised himself as he continued down the hill toward home. "I belong at that school as much as anyone." When he reached the farm, Diego found his father repairing a tractor in the main barn. Hector looked up from his work, immediately noticing the shadow over his son's features. "Rough day?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. Diego shrugged, dropping his backpack on a nearby hay bale. "The usual. Principal Blackwood threatened my scholarship again." Hector's expression darkened. "Because you were late?" "Because I had dirt on my boots," Diego replied, beginning to change from his school clothes back into work gear. "She said I was disrupting the school environment." A heavy silence fell between them. Diego could see his father struggling with the familiar conflict, pride in his son's academic opportunities versus anger at the prejudice he faced. "Perhaps," Hector finally said, "it is time they learned who we really are." Diego looked up, surprised. The Alvarez family had always maintained a low profile, focusing on their work rather than recognition. "What do you mean, Papa?" Hector smiled, a rare mischievous glint in his eyes. "You finish your homework tonight. Tomorrow, we may have a different kind of lesson to teach." As the sun set over the Alvarez farm, casting long shadows across the fields they had nurtured through drought and flood, father and son worked side by side. Diego didn't know what his father had in mind, but for the first time that day, he felt hope rising in his chest. Principal Blackwood had judged him solely on appearances, never bothering to look deeper. She had no idea who she was dealing with, no idea about the legacy of the Alvarez family or the quiet power they held in this community. But she was about to find out. The Alvarez farmhouse kitchen glowed with warm light as Diego finished his calculus homework. His father sat across the worn oak table, reviewing paperwork with a concentration that matched his son's. Outside, darkness had fallen completely, wrapping the farmland in a quiet blanket of night. "Done," Diego announced, closing his textbook. Hector looked up from his papers, pride evident in the smile lines around his eyes. "Good. Now we can talk about what happened today." Diego sighed, the memory of Principal Blackwood's public humiliation still fresh. "It's nothing new, Papa. She's always looked at me like I don't belong there." Hector set his reading glasses down, folding his hands on the table. "Your mother would have marched into that school the moment you told her what happened." The mention of his mother brought a sad smile to Diego's face. Isabel Alvarez had passed away 5 years ago after a brief but fierce battle with cancer. She had been the heart of their family, a woman with only an 8th-grade education but wisdom that surpassed any academic credential. "Mom never took disrespect from anyone," Diego agreed. "No, she did not." Hector's voice softened with memory. "But she also taught us that how we respond to disrespect reveals our character." A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Diego opened it to find his older sister Lucia standing on the porch, travel bag in hand, her face tired but smiling. "Surprise," she said, opening her arms for a hug. Diego embraced his sister tightly. At 24, Lucia Alvarez had become something of a legend in agricultural engineering circles. After graduating at the top of her class from Cornell University, she had spent the past 2 years working on sustainable farming projects across South America and Asia. "You weren't supposed to be back for another month," Diego said, taking her bag as she entered the house. Lucia hugged their father, who had risen from his chair with uncharacteristic speed. "The Bolivia project wrapped up early, and I missed my boys." Over a late dinner of their father's legendary chicken pozole, Diego recounted the day's events at school. Lucia's expression darkened with each detail. "So nothing has changed," she said when he finished. "Same prejudice, different principle." Diego shrugged. "It's just how it is." "No." Lucia set her spoon down firmly. "That's not how it is, and it's not how it has to be." Hector exchanged a look with his daughter. "I was just telling Diego that perhaps it's time we stopped hiding who we are." Diego looked between them, confusion evident on his face. "What are you talking about?" "We're not hiding anything." Lucia took a deep breath. "Diego, do you know why Mom insisted you apply to Westlake Academy instead of going to the public high school?" Because it has the best science program in the county, Diego replied immediately. And the highest rate of college placements. Yes, Lucia nodded. But there's more to it than that. Hector stood up and walked to the old secretary desk in the corner of the living room. From a locked drawer, he removed a worn leather portfolio. Your mother wanted you to attend Westlake because she helped build it. Diego's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Hector placed the portfolio on the table and opened it. Inside were newspaper clippings, photographs, and documents that Diego had never seen before. The top photograph showed a much younger version of his mother standing beside a distinguished-looking man in front of Westlake Academy's main building. Except the building was only partially constructed. Mom was a cleaning lady at Westlake, Diego said, confused. That's what you always told me. She was, Lucia confirmed. But that was after everything fell apart. Hector pointed to the man in the photograph. This is Thomas Westlake. He founded the academy 30 years ago, and your mother was his assistant and the head of community outreach. She was the one who insisted the school include a robust agricultural science program to serve local farming families. Diego stared at the photograph, trying to reconcile this new information with everything he thought he knew. But if she helped found the school, why did she end up as a cleaner there? The heaviness in his father's sigh told Diego this wasn't a simple story. Politics. Money. The usual reasons good things fall apart. When Thomas Westlake died, control of the school passed to the board of trustees. They had different ideas about the direction the school should take. Your mother fought to maintain the original vision, but eventually, she was pushed out. She could have left completely, Lucia added. But she took a job as part of the cleaning staff to stay connected to the school she helped build. She wanted to make sure the agricultural program survived, even if no one remembered she created it. Diego leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed. Why didn't you ever tell me this? Your mother didn't want you carrying her grievances, Hector explained. She wanted you to form your own opinions, make your own way. But there's something else you need to know, Lucia said, pulling out her laptop. She opened a spreadsheet and turned it to face Diego. Remember how I helped Papa reorganize the farm finances when I was home last year? Diego nodded. His sister had spent weeks digitizing their father's old-fashioned paper accounting system. I found something interesting, Lucia continued. For the past 15 years, a significant portion of the farm's profits has been directed to a foundation. The Isabel Alvarez Educational Foundation. Diego's eyes widened. We have a foundation? Hector nodded solemnly. Your mother established it before she died. Every year, the foundation makes an anonymous donation to Westlake Academy's scholarship fund. The revelation hit Diego like a physical blow. We're funding scholarships at Westlake. My scholarship. No, Lucia corrected. Your scholarship is merit-based. You earn that on your own. But the foundation funds 3 full scholarships each year for students from farming families. Diego stood up abruptly, pacing the small kitchen. So all this time, while Principal Blackwood has been treating me like dirt, our family has been helping keep the school running? It gets more interesting, Lucia said, pulling up another document on her laptop. Last month, I received an email from a James Thompson, the school's financial director. Apparently, Principal Blackwood has been telling the board of trustees that she personally secured these anonymous donations through her connections. Hector's expression hardened. She has been taking credit for your mother's generosity. Diego felt a surge of anger unlike anything he had experienced before. She has no right. No, she doesn't, Lucia agreed. But that's not all I discovered. The reason I came home early wasn't just to see you two. I was contacted by several members of the Westlake Alumni Association. They're concerned about changes Principal Blackwood is planning to implement next year. She pulled up an email and turned the screen toward Diego. She's planning to eliminate the agricultural science program completely. The funds will be redirected to expand the Performing Arts Center, which will, conveniently, be named after her. Diego felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath him. The agricultural science program was his passion, the reason he tolerated all the prejudice and isolation at Westlake. More importantly, it was his mother's legacy. She can't do that, he whispered. She can if no one stops her, Lucia replied. The board votes on the proposal next week. Hector reached across the table and placed his weathered hand over his son's. Now you understand why I said it might be time to stop hiding who we are. Diego looked at the portfolio again, at the photograph of his mother standing proud at the school's groundbreaking. "What are you suggesting?" Lucia smiled, a glint in her eye that reminded Diego of their mother. "I think it's time for Principal Blackwood to learn who she's really been dealing with." The next morning, Diego dressed for school with unusual care. His clothes were still modest. He owned nothing fancy, but they were clean and pressed. His father drove him to school instead of making him walk or take the bus. "Remember," Hector said as they pulled up to the drop-off zone, "you have nothing to be ashamed of. You are Isabel Alvarez's son." Diego nodded, a new confidence straightening his spine as he walked through the school's front doors. The whispers and stares that had bothered him yesterday now slid off him like water. He had a secret knowledge that changed everything. In AP Biology, Dr. Patterson announced a special project. The school board has approved a field trip to study local agricultural innovations. We'll be visiting 3 farms over the next month to observe different approaches to sustainable farming. Vanessa Wright raised her hand. "Do we really have to visit farms? It's so dirty." Her friends giggled around her. Dr. Patterson's expression remained professional, but Diego could see the slight tightening around his eyes. "Ms. Wright, some of the most cutting-edge environmental science is happening on farms today. This is an opportunity to see theory put into practice." "What farms will we be visiting?" Noah Palmer asked. "The Reynolds Corporate Farm, Green Valley Cooperative, and—" Dr. Patterson glanced at Diego with a small smile. "The Alvarez family farm." A ripple of surprise moved through the classroom. Jackson Reynolds turned to stare at Diego. "Your dirt patch? What could we possibly learn there?" Before Diego could respond, Dr. Patterson interjected. "The Alvarez farm has pioneered several organic farming techniques that have been featured in agricultural journals. Their water conservation system is being studied by researchers at the State University." Diego felt a flush of pride at the defense, but said nothing. Let them see for themselves. The truth would be revealed soon enough. At lunch, Diego sat at his usual isolated table. To his surprise, Noah Palmer joined him. "Is it true your farm is some kind of agricultural test site?" Noah asked. Diego shrugged. "We try new things. Some work, some don't." "Cool," Noah said, seeming genuinely interested. "My dad says most farmers are too stuck in their ways to innovate." "Innovation is the only way small farms survive," Diego replied. "The big corporate operations can afford to do things the expensive way. We have to be smarter." Their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of Principal Blackwood, who rarely ventured into the cafeteria during lunch periods. "Mr. Palmer," she said with a tight smile, "there are several empty seats elsewhere." The implication was clear: don't associate with Diego. Noah hesitated, then stood his ground. "I'm good here, thanks." Principal Blackwood's smile didn't reach her eyes. "As you wish." She turned to Diego. "Mr. Alvarez, I expect you've taken our conversation yesterday to heart." Diego met her gaze steadily. "Yes, Principal Blackwood. I've been thinking about it a great deal." Something in his tone made her pause, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face before she nodded and moved away. After school, Diego found a note in his locker asking him to meet with James Thompson, the school's financial director. He found the man waiting in a small office off the main administrative suite. "Thank you for coming, Diego," Thompson said, gesturing for him to sit. A man in his 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, Thompson had always treated Diego with respect. "I wanted to speak with you privately about the agricultural program." Diego tensed. "What about it?" "I understand your sister Lucia is back in town," Thompson said, surprising Diego. "I worked with your mother, you know, many years ago, when the school was first established." "You knew my mother?" Diego hadn't expected this connection. Thompson nodded, his expression softening with memory. "Isabel was a remarkable woman. She had a vision for this school that went beyond test scores and college acceptances. She believed education should connect students to the land, to their heritage." "I didn't know," Diego admitted. "I only just learned about her involvement with the school." "She wanted it that way," Thompson sighed. "After the falling out with the board, she preferred to work quietly in the background." He leaned forward. "Diego, I'm concerned about the direction Principal Blackwood is taking the school. The agricultural program your mother fought so hard to establish is at risk." "I know," Diego said. "My sister told me about the proposal." Thompson looked relieved. "Then you also know about the foundation? The anonymous donations?" Diego nodded. "I found out last night." Principal Blackwood has been telling the board that she personally secured those donations. Thompson continued, his voice low. She's built her reputation on her supposed fundraising prowess. If the board knew the truth, they will, Diego assured him. Soon, as Diego left the office, he spotted Principal Blackwood giving a tour to a group of potential donors. Her voice carried down the hallway as she boasted about the school's exclusive programming and selective admissions. Westlake Academy represents excellence in every aspect, she was saying. Our students come from the finest families in the region, and they go on to the most prestigious universities. Diego walked past the group, nodding politely. Principal Blackwood faltered mid-sentence, clearly unsettled by his newfound confidence. Outside, Diego found Lucia waiting for him in her rental car. How was day 2 of knowing the truth? She asked as he climbed in. Enlightening, Diego replied. I met James Thompson. He knew Mom. Lucia nodded. I've been in touch with him. He's been trying to protect Mom's programs from within, but Blackwood has too much influence with the board. What's the plan? Diego asked as they drove toward home. Lucia grinned. First, we prepare for your class field trip. The Alvarez farm is going to put on quite a show. Then, we attend the board meeting next week. Will that be enough? Diego wondered. Trust me, little brother, Lucia said, her eyes sparkling with determination. By this time next week, Principal Diane Blackwood will be wishing she had never looked down on a farmer's son. Back at the farm, Diego was surprised to find several university researchers walking the fields with his father. Equipment was being set up near the experimental section where Diego had been testing new irrigation methods. What's going on? He asked Lucia. I made some calls, she replied. These researchers have been wanting to study our water conservation system for months. I figured now was the perfect time for them to collect their data. Just in time for the field trip, Diego realized, impressed by his sister's strategic thinking. Exactly, Lucia confirmed. And that's not all. Remember how Mom always said education is about connection rather than separation? Diego nodded, following his sister toward the barn where several workers were unloading equipment. Well, Lucia continued, I've arranged for a few special guests to join the board meeting next week. People whose voices need to be heard. Inside the barn, Diego was amazed to see state-of-the-art monitoring systems being installed alongside the traditional farming equipment. Screens displayed real-time data on soil moisture, nutrient levels, and crop health. This is incredible, he breathed. This is the future of farming, Lucia corrected. And it's happening right here, on our dirt patch, as your classmate so eloquently put it. Diego looked around at the transformation taking place. For years, he had kept his world separate, the sophisticated academic environment of Westlake and the honest labor of the farm. Now, those worlds were about to collide. Do you think it will make a difference? He asked quietly. Will they actually see us differently? Lucia placed a hand on his shoulder. Some will, some won't. But that's not really the point, is it? This isn't about changing their minds. It's about standing in our truth. As the sun began to set over the Alvarez farm, casting long shadows across the fields that had sustained their family for generations, Diego felt a shift within himself. The shame he had carried for so long, the sense that he somehow didn't measure up to his Westlake peers, was dissolving, replaced by a fierce pride in who he was and where he came from. Principal Blackwood had judged him based on the dirt under his fingernails, never bothering to understand what that dirt represented. Honest work, innovation, and a deep connection to the land that fed them all. She had no idea that the family she dismissed as simple farmers had been quietly supporting the very institution she now controlled. But she was about to find out. And when she did, the foundations of her carefully constructed world would crumble beneath her designer heels. Diego smiled at the thought. His mother had always taught him that true education wasn't just about books and theories. It was about understanding the connections between all things. Principal Blackwood was about to receive an education she would never forget. The Westlake Academy boardroom buzzed with tension as community members filled every available seat. Principal Diane Blackwood sat at the head table, her perfect posture betraying no hint of the anxiety she felt at the unexpected turnout. Board meetings typically attracted few attendees, but tonight the room was packed. Shall we begin? Board President Harold Wright asked, calling the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the proposed budget reallocation for next year. Principal Blackwood rose, sleek presentation folder in hand. Thank you, Mr. President. As outlined in the proposal before you, we are recommending the elimination of the agricultural science program to expand our performing arts center. Diego, seated between his father and sister in the back row, watched as Blackwood launched into her carefully rehearsed presentation. Her voice was confident as she displayed charts showing the minimal enrollment in agricultural courses compared to dramatic arts. The agricultural program is a relic of the past, she declared. Westlake Academy must evolve to prepare students for the future, not cling to outdated curricula that serve only a tiny minority. James Thompson, seated at the side table with other administrative staff, caught Diego's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod, the signal they had been waiting for. Lucia stood. Mr. President, I request permission to address the board regarding this proposal. Harold Wright looked surprised. And you are? Lucia Alvarez, Cornell University Department of Agricultural Engineering. I'm here representing the Isabel Alvarez Educational Foundation. A murmur swept through the room. Principal Blackwood's presentation faltered as she stared at Lucia with undisguised shock. What foundation? Wright asked, clearly confused. Perhaps I can clarify, James Thompson interjected, rising from his seat. The Isabel Alvarez Educational Foundation has been the anonymous donor supporting Westlake's scholarship program for the past 15 years. Their contributions total over $2 million to date. The boardroom erupted in whispers. Principal Blackwood's face drained of color. That's impossible, she stammered. I personally secured those donations through my network of. No, you didn't, Thompson said firmly, placing a folder on the table. These are the original donation records, showing transfers from the foundation established by Isabel Alvarez before her death. Board President Wright opened the folder, his expression grave as he reviewed the documents. Principal Blackwood, were you aware of this? Before she could respond, Lucia continued. Isabel Alvarez was my mother. She helped found this school alongside Thomas Westlake 30 years ago. She established the agricultural program that Principal Blackwood now seeks to eliminate. All eyes turned to Diego and Hector as they stood beside Lucia. Recognition dawned on several faces, the connection between the humble farmer's son and this unexpected revelation becoming clear. This is absurd, Principal Blackwood protested. I've never heard of Isabel Alvarez being involved in founding this institution. An elderly woman rose shakily from her seat near the front. I have. The room fell silent as former board secretary Martha Chun approached the table. I served on the original board with Thomas Westlake. Isabel was his right hand in establishing this school. After Thomas died, Isabel was gradually pushed aside by newer board members who wanted a more exclusive direction for the academy. Principal Blackwood's composure cracked further. Even if this is true, it changes nothing about my proposal. The agricultural program is underutilized and outdated. Is it? Lucia challenged, gesturing toward the door where several distinguished-looking visitors entered. These researchers from the State University Agricultural Department might disagree. They've been studying the innovative techniques developed at Alvarez Family Farm, techniques that Diego has been applying in his agricultural science projects at this school. Dr. Patterson stood from his seat. I can confirm this. Diego's work combining traditional farming knowledge with cutting-edge technology represents exactly the kind of innovation we should be fostering, not eliminating. Principal Blackwood's expression hardened as she fought to regain control of the situation. This is all very touching, but sentiment doesn't change financial realities. The Performing Arts Center expansion has already secured major donor commitments. Conditional commitments, corrected James Thompson. Contingent upon the Isabel Alvarez Foundation's matching funds, which Principal Blackwood assured donors were guaranteed. Which they are not, Lucia stated firmly. In fact, our foundation is prepared to withdraw all financial support from Westlake Academy if the agricultural program is eliminated. The threat hung in the air like a thundercloud. Board members exchanged alarmed glances. Additionally, Hector Alvarez spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but commanding. As the executor of my late wife's estate, I feel obligated to inform the board of one final detail Isabel included in her will. He nodded to James Thompson, who distributed another document to the board members. As they read, Expressions of shock appeared on their faces. "Is this verified?" Board President Wright asked Thompson. "It is," Thompson confirmed. The original land deed for the eastern portion of the campus was transferred to a trust controlled by the Alvarez family. The school has been operating under a 99-year lease that includes specific provisions about maintaining the agricultural program. Principal Blackwood snatched the document, her hands trembling as she read. "This is preposterous. How could no one know about this?" "People knew," Thompson replied. "They just didn't think it mattered anymore." Diego stepped forward. All the eyes in the room turned to him. The farm boy they had dismissed, the scholarship student Principal Blackwood, had humiliated. "I don't want to see the performing arts program suffer," he said, his voice steady. "Arts education is valuable too. My mother believed that education should connect, not divide." He looked directly at Principal Blackwood. "But so is agricultural science. So is respecting every student's background and contributions." The room fell silent as his words settled. Even Vanessa Wright and her father looked thoughtful. Board President Wright cleared his throat. "In light of this information, I move that we table the proposed budget reallocation and form a committee to reevaluate our priorities, with input from the Alvarez Foundation." The motion passed unanimously. As the meeting adjourned, Principal Blackwood stood frozen, her career-defining project derailed, her credibility shattered. Diego approached her, not with triumph, but with quiet dignity. "My mother believed everyone deserves second chances, Principal Blackwood. She took a cleaning job at the school she helped create because she still believed in its potential." Principal Blackwood couldn't meet his eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because tomorrow morning, I'll still be showing up with dirt under my fingernails sometimes. The question is, will you finally see beyond it?" 2 months later, Diego stood in the newly renamed Isabel Alvarez Agricultural Science Center, watching as students from Westlake and neighboring public schools worked together on sustainable farming projects. Lucia had accepted a position as guest lecturer, dividing her time between international work and teaching at her mother's school. Principal Blackwood had resigned, replaced by Dr. Patterson as interim principal while a search committee sought permanent leadership. The school was gradually changing, becoming more like the inclusive institution Isabel had envisioned. As Diego walked between the experimental garden plots, he spotted Noah and several other Westlake students working alongside students from the public high school, former boundaries dissolving in the shared work. "Your mother would be proud," Hector said, joining his son. Diego nodded, feeling her presence in the warm sunshine, in the rich soil beneath his boots, in the legacy that could no longer be erased. "She always said true education reveals connections," Diego replied. "I think people are finally starting to see them."